Hey everyone, I'm Mike Henry, and this is my Procreate 4.1 demo for the piece I call Beach Lite. So I started this a while ago while I was on a business trip at my previous company, then went through like a whole reload and settling in a new place and wrapped it up during that period. And just to make matters worse, I was trying out something new. So let's talk about what my sort of general thesis was and see if it worked at all. So here are the rough lines for the piece with just the color gradient that I have in the background. And what I wanted to try out, now this could absolutely be a perfectly standard way that most people work, but for me this was just something I was thinking about and I wanted to try it out and just see if it worked for me. So let's simulate real quick, just this is where her hat would be, the shield from the sun. And so I just had an idea of isolating the shadow part and having a different direction for the light. So here we've got the sun coming down. We'll represent it with this ugly color that can be barely seen. There we go, that's darker. So this is the direction of the sun. So that meant that everything that her hat wasn't blocking was going to be receiving the light from this direction. And then there I am showing it hitting the top of her hat, right? So it's not going to hit her head. So we have to define sort of a general area where the sun won't hit. All of the form under the hat will then be lit from the bottom, from the theoretical reflection of like the sand and just the light around her. And so that means that her body and her face and all that will get like some lighting from that direction as well, but that her face and all of that is right here underneath this shaded area. Now, a lot of the time I'll replicate a vibe like this, but not necessarily with as thought out ways, more like parlor tricks kind of. And this was me trying to think, okay, can I actually do something where we've got the shadowy part that has a different light source, and then the non-shadowed part will have what would normally be the standard light source. And I sort of did it this exact way by using like a purple set to multiply. So let's go ahead and get into it and see how it was actually done. We start, of course, with a rough sketch. I used the fat pencil here, but this is it doesn't matter at all what you use here. If you've followed my work for a long time, you know that if I've already known that I'm going to do something rendered, then that means that the sketch, planning out the entire thing, will be just super messy and will never get cleaned up because there's really no point. It's better sometimes to have an impression of where you want the paint to go, or at least that's how I handle things. That way I'm not too much of a slave to the original line art and trying to nail the original line art. As far as the actual character and as far as the pose and everything, I mean, it's all pretty mundane. The idea here was that I wanted to do something that was about this lighting, and I had that general idea in mind from the very beginning. When I was doing, let's see, if we go back to like the flower girl that I did a while ago, almost a year ago, or like there was like that thug that's got sort of the blue skin and he's lit kind of weirdly. There are ideas in those pieces and a few others that have culminated in what I was trying to do here. So you can see me if you go back to those and you sort of see what they look like, maybe even watch the video, you can see how some of the thought process there translated into here. So that first rough was not only a little too rough, but it wasn't exactly where I wanted to go with the form. So this is just now a pass to say, okay, I got the super rough down. Let's make some more decisions and get this closer to something that I want to paint. This phase, by the way, was done on an airplane, and I was cramped when I did it, and I think you can see that in the original sketch. There's like a flowiness to it that was kind of missing, and I sort of make up for it with the second rough and then with the actual paint process. I'm a big fan of messed up teeth in characters because I think that it, of course, adds a lot of character. It keeps things from feeling too artificial, but I didn't want this one to be too distracting in that way. So she has very mundane teeth compared to, I guess, what I normally try to do. very basic bikini top. I didn't do any reference for it. Actually, I probably looked up one thing just to make sure it was like at least basically sound, but it's just very generic. Unlike some of my more like fashiony illustrations where I'm actually referencing things, I didn't really reference anything here. So that blob of paint there, that was me just trying something out. It didn't work out, and so then I went into my usual flatting method. This was actually done in two sections. It's like that big front mass and then the back mass, because I didn't know what I was going to do with it. So those are split up into two things. And then this little bit of hair coming down on the distant side of her head is one layer, and then the hair on the front side is also one layer, although I eventually bring that into the bangs layer. And then here's just the standard eye flatting. Nothing really unique happening right now. It's me just sort of picking the shapes that I think are going to work, picking colors that approximate where I want them to go, and then we'll get into it in a second with the lighting. It's funny because the hat is such a huge element, but this angle, there's very little going on with it. It's like these two massive shapes, and then it's not till towards the very end that they really get any kind of special work done to them with lighting and things like that. I also went with like an anime eyebrow where the eyebrow like shows through the hair. I've just always kind of liked that convention. I thought it'd be fun to do it in this context. Okay, now we're just doing the basic flats for the bikini top. And now coming up here, it's going to be kind of quick. I slowed it down as much as possible, but you're going to see me lay in my initial cast shadow from the hat, and it's coming in right here, testing it out, trying to figure out what color, and then going like, okay, I'll put it in this shape right here. And now I just start painting her skin as if it's being lit from the sun. Then right there you saw me use that shadow layer to apply a mask to those skin layers, and I do it over and over again. So I keep painting the skin as though it is her full body, and then I mask it away using that shadow layer. And then this was just a quick test, like, okay, I'll throw this in here real quick and light it and just see like if this whole scheme is going to work. So this first pass on the face is a little messy, but then I start tightening it up after that. So you can see here, everything that's in that shadowed area is now getting lit as though it is coming from sort of like her, from on the ground and in front of her. Now you're going to see lots of value changes and things, rando things happening through this, because as I'm doing it, I'm of course unconfident because I'm trying something new, and I need to tweak things as I go and turn layers on and off and just try to see if I can get certain things to work. By the way, that shadow for the head was done by bringing all of those layers together into one mass and filling them in so that I could get the hair, the eyes, the mouth, the skin, all that stuff on one big thing. Because her face skin and her body skin, which are two really weird things to say, are on separate layers, so that all had to be merged and stuff. So now you can see I'm going in and cleaning this up a little bit more. I've got the actual shadow layer turned on now so that I can try and visualize it the way it's going to be when everything is said and done. And I'm using a reverse mask now for these sections. So I'm painting them in, but I'm minding the edge, like the edge of the shadow, but I'm painting them in as though they are just as if her whole body were lit from below and in front. But then it's got the shadow layer, and then I'm using that shadow layer to mask everything. So that's what's happening there. The things going on here in terms of the colors, I'm essentially following all the same rules I usually do with the warmer highs and the cooler lows, bringing in some dark here in the ear and by the hairline in order to just push those forms a little bit more strongly. Now we're starting to paint in the eye. I'm slapping some stuff down there really quickly because I'm trying to test some things out, and now I get into some more serious rendering and trying to choose what I'm doing more carefully. So now just painting in the iris details, putting the shine, like the reflective shine in, a really hot light source. And then you can see I added in all the bounce from the sand, and now we're doing the teeth. Now something you'll notice there, it flipped by really quickly, but the shines and all of those light things are on top of the shadow layer. There you go, now you can see it a lot more clearly. That's why those like ring so bright and bring so much glassiness to her eye, because the surface of her eye and all that is shadowed, but then those reflective aspects pick up the light without that being an impedance. So we've got body skin with the freckles and everything. We've got face skin with all the details and the freckles and the blush, like the blood coming through and all those things. The mouth, the teeth. Now we're moving on to the hair. The hair is entirely within the shadow, so that keeps it simple. We don't have to worry about any kind of transitions, just lighting it from below. Nothing really too special with the hair. The easiest way to describe it is I'm painting the larger masses and trying to give it a little bit of texture here and there, and then I go back in later with a thinner brush where I do some overlays both in black and in white. Well, I say that. I can't remember if I did both. I certainly did white. And then lowered those opacities like crazy to try and give it more texture like its hair. That was actually a technique that I developed like 12, 13 years ago now when I was doing some texture stuff for a game. I just did something similar but a little bit lighter and a little bit more stylized for this. You can see there when the layer flipped off for a second that the hair behind her ear and the hair as bangs are two completely separate sets of layers. So now we've got the base flat, we've got a very subtle highlight layer, a higher value layer, not really a highlight, but a higher value layer, and then we've got the shadow layer, and now here I am going in with white set to overlay, and I'm adding in the strands for texture purposes. See, it's all messy and stuff. And then I lower the opacity, maybe give it a slight blur so that it's a little less artificial, and that'll add some texture. It'll basically only add the texture though when it's like zoomed in, but that's sort of what it's there for when you see it larger. Added the shine, a very stylized shine, because I wanted to make sure there was still enough stylization going on here. And now what I'm doing is more of like the standard rim lighting process on the parts that are shadowed for her like skin and stuff like that. Here we go in and do the eyebrow, just putting in the detail. Here's some little just tweaky stuff with like the teeth and very small things that I noticed at the time that I just wanted to push a little bit. And now we're going to do the bikini top. So I knew that like just it being blue was going to be kind of boring, so I just wanted to add some fun to it. So it's got like a blue and white stripe thing going. Right here it's that I guess like ribbing or piping or tubing, I guess would be better, that goes sort of along the edge of the bikini, and then the actual sort of like, it's not really a cup, but it's like the cup part, getting like more of a smooth surface to it. Those are painted on separate layers, so I can then go in and erase away with a really soft brush and get the shape right, but then also get like where the piping stops correctly. Also doing those little folds, like where it gathers up there at the top, is just done with a selection where I just select out a area, and then the harder part of that selection is where the edge is, and then I softly erase to get the rest of it, and then I replicate that for the shadow as well. So using a combination of the selection and the airbrush eraser in order to pull that off. Here I just picked a textured brush and set it to, I think, overlay or add, and it was white. Follow the form, lower the opacity, that type of stuff. And at the very end here, just add this cast shadow right there. And then the bounce light from the sand at the very, very end. And now just some light texture on the hat, some lighting stuff on the hat. And now I just wanted to add a little bit more shine to her skin. I mean, she's technically out of the beach. Yeah, you could technically not sweat or whatever, and it's not really about it being sweat. It's just I wanted it to key a little bit higher and sell some of the dimension there a little bit more. And now we're at the phase where I'm going in and being super tweaky. In fact, if you go through this video for the rest of the part here where we're showing the paint process and look through it, you'll see like lots of little flicks of paint here or there, or me slightly pushing some of the form on something, defining something a little bit more, or just adding like little things. In fact, the way that I edit this in iMovie, it's a fairly small image, and I can't even see all the things that are happening right now, but hopefully when you're viewing this at 1080p, you can probably see some of what's going on, like in the hair or something. Almost always it's a dead giveaway that if I turn off the shadow layer, that means I'm working on something that's under the shadows, because then I can pick like true colors, and it's a lot easier then. By the way, a true color picker would be kind of cool, right? Something that could pick the underlying color when there isn't like a layer effect on. I don't know. Let me put that more into thought, but I feel like I'm always turning stuff off just so I can color pick something accurately or something. I don't know. That probably already exists. Probably not in Procreate, but probably in Photoshop, and I'm just dumb to it. Okay, so now here at the very end, I add in the earrings, as well as some hair tweaks, just to give it just a little push in the volume. And then turn on sort of all the layers and get it into its final state, and that's what you see right there. So let's look at the Procreate file just for a second to talk a little bit about the shadow layer and how that ended up working out. This is not the final version of the illustration, because that was in a version that was more destroyed, but you can see that folder right there that I just turned off that's called New Group, because I did such a great job naming my layers here. When I turn that off, look at all the effects and everything that goes away. It's like rim lights, the shadow, all the shines, the cast. So let's turn these off one by one. You can see as I'm turning them off here, all the things that are disappearing. This folder is sort of like the wow folder, you know, it's like the illustration is fine, it's competent, but then this folder is where all the things that sort of turn on your like, the part of your brain that likes things, that's where everything is here. It's like the dramatic lighting, the shines, all of that kind of stuff. So there's the shadow, that's the color of it, you can see in the thumbnail. And then it's set to multiply. It has no lowered opacity or anything. And then you can see here where I've got the selection on right now, so you can see the shape of it. That right there is what I used throughout the piece as a mask for things. So we turn everything back on again one by one. We got the eye bounce, we got the eye reflection, the light, we've got the bounce light, bunch of little things. There's even like a loose strands of hair layer in there. We've got some of that blue light coming from the back. The super tiny earring shine layer right here. Had to be its own layer because it's a shine, so it needed to be on top of the shadow layer. And then the like bloom from the sky. And there it is. That's how that was done. So this is the final piece right here. I hope you dig it. It was really fun to do, pretty experimental for me. Here's the roughs, and then we'll go back to the final again just so you can see how rough it is and then how tightened up it gets for the painting process. So thanks a lot for watching. I hope you enjoyed it. Please do the liking thing, the subscribing thing, the notification bell thing, and all the other stuff that YouTube makes us say. We want to survive in any way, I guess. And if you're looking for me on the internet, these are the places where you can find me.